Hello everybody, welcome back to the Kerbal Space Program video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the biggest operational rocket from every year that there have been operational orbit rockets, starting in 1957 with the Sputnik launch vehicle. Yes, this was the first, but also the first, the biggest. This is technically for 3 years the biggest orbital launch vehicle. It could carry 500 kilograms to orbit. Pretty wimpy by today's Saturn. That's about Electron. But back then, biggest thing ever. This was kind of what started it all. This was the launch of Sputnik, with kind of started the space race and all that stuff. Pretty epic. But yeah. So like I said, we're going to be working through every year and looking at the biggest operational rockets. So what I mean by operational is a rocket currently operating in that year. So yes, Saturn V is the biggest rocket, but it was retired in the 70s. So, the biggest rocket after it was retired will take over. So, the Saturn V isn't just, operational, right? So, we have now got our way basically almost into orbit right now. And we're going to be circularizing ourselves with our Sputnik, which looks very white, which is the color of these things actually back in the good old days when Soviet Union was around. Yay, communism, right? So yeah, it's gonna circularize, and you can see the satellite there. It's that tiny little tip at the top. Yeah, not very efficient payload to mass ratio, but either way, one thing I'm gonna do after getting to orbit, this thing is actually a meme. This mod. Oh yeah, modded rockets, right? That's a new thing for the channel. Very cool. I think we use a bunch of mods. Huge shout out to all the mods. I'll try and link the mods I use in the description because I remember there's so many of them I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, this thing was an absolute meme, and the Sputnik, I realized, could survive re-entry and actually came in super slow, and I could actually land it on the ground. So I decided I wanted to have a look at the landing of the Sputnik. I don't know why. This is just such a meme that it can actually land like this. So yeah, that's we're just doing this because before we move on to the next one. If you are enjoying the video, guys, you can the epic subscribe button. I know, right? We're past the Matlound 2, Matlound second channel, and Gameplay for UK. All these poggers, man, right? Huge thanks for giving me a sub, though. We're 11,000. That's pretty crazy number. Thank you, guys. You guys, the best. Also, I got merch now. Links and pictures, and buy it. Don't buy it. I don't know. If you want to. Oh, thank you. You've already got, as of recording, we have three shirts sold, so thank you, everybody. And also thank you for joining our Discord or become a member and all this stuff, and Patreon. And thank you, everyone. Let's watch this landing of this absolute meme, which I actually tried to land on its legs, as you can see. We're coming at like 15 meters a second, which is like, how physics, hello? Like, that thing should not be coming in that slow. But yeah, boink, 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 boink. Alright, so now we can move on to Vostok, another R7 variant. R7 is a boost to the ICBM Soviet booster, and this is 1960, and there's a pretty big jump in payload capacity, and this thing could carry 4.7 tons, which is a lot. A lot. And oh boy, big disclaimer, I really hope I got this list right. I may have gotten it wrong. We did a lot of research, and I'm pretty sure, so Vostok and Luna are both very, very similar. They have virtually identical second stages, which is why I decided to include Vostok and not Luna, because they're basically the same thing, and Vostok is cooler because Yuri Gagarin, it's like manned and stuff. And there go a majestic little Korolev cross there. So yeah, Vostok is a two-stage, technically depends if you count the boosters as a stage, 2 or 3 stage rocket. The Sputnik was just the boosters, which would separate, and then the core stage, which would head on up to orbit. This thing has boosters separate, the core stage will get us all the way almost to orbit, and then it will separate, and there will be a little tiny little upper stage, which will power us the rest of the way to orbit, and then we'll be able to circularize our very epic spacecraft. You know what, I realized after recording, while doing this video, I actually quite interested, learned a lot about, rockets and crap, but there's a lot of these big rockets are actually manned, so that's cool. I didn't realize that they were crewed and stuff. There's like all the big ones are crewed up until like the 80s and 90s and 2000s and stuff. So that's pretty wild. Space race got to build the big rockets, man, big rockets. So we are now in space, and we are going to get ready to circularize our Vostok. It's actually crazy. 4.7 tons is a pretty respectable amount, especially in the 60s. And this was 1968 first launch. So yeah, GG to the Soviets. Good old slave labor, am I right? What? That doesn't happen. Either way. So we separate the spacecraft, and now we can just crossfade to us, deorbiting it. The Soviet, the capsules are just the funniest thing to me. They're just balls. It's hilarious. It's a big shiny metal ball falling through the atmosphere. That just looks super safe. I really would not want to be on there. And these guys, You know, on the first ones, I believe they actually had to jump out the first few launches, and we will of course be demonstrating that unique ability here. Yeah, literally Yuri Gagarin had to like pop the door open because the parachute. They had a parachute, but I don't think it could slow it down enough. So he had to like just jump out, which is just Mother Russia superior, right? That thing is really shiny for some reason. But yeah, here when we get a little bit lower to the ground and we can go and pop our chute, and then we will be quickly the interior. Really good interior, by the way. Nice. GG to the mods. I'm going to go ahead and hop out of our capsule when we are nice and low down to the ground. And yeah, it looks like we're coming in face first, which seems super safe. And there we go. We can go ahead and hit the EVA button. Abort, bail, whee, parachute. And yeah. Soviet Union, man, they were pretty wild. And there we go. We can just kind of do a little bit of speed slowing down maneuver as everything flies into the ground. This thing can take a pretty high impact velocity, and there goes our spacecraft rolling away. Bye-bye! And hello to the Titan II Gemini launch vehicle. Blue Dog design beer. Really, really great historical rockets. Get the mod. Amazing mod. Yeah, this is the Titan II Gemini, which took over as the biggest rocket in 1964, not because it has a higher payload capacity than Vostok, but because Vostok was retired. Yeah, so 1964, the Titan II, with a payload capacity of 3.6 tons, was the largest orbital rocket for a year. This area from 1964, 1965, 1966, and 1967 all have different rockets. So there's a lot of like switcheroonies going on in here. So we are starting. So 1965, we have, or rather 1964 is when the Titan II Gemini, which took over as the biggest launch vehicle, 3.6 tons. Really cool rocket, Titan II, very sick. Gemini, very cool with the the death abort, the death ejection seats. Those are pretty epic. So I'm gonna go ahead and circularize ourselves into an orbit with our upper stage. Titan II is just a solid rocket. I mean, it was liquid fueled, but no pun intended. I mean, it really wasn't a pun because it's not a solid rocket. Whatever. Point is, we are now getting our way into orbit with the Titan II, the Gemini. It's a very epic, and there you go. We're gonna go ahead and circularize it, and then we will go ahead and separate the spacecraft, which there's that weird black like thing on the top, and we're gonna separate. Now we're gonna fire our retro rockets into orbit. The caps looks kind of weird on the top, but oh well. And now comes for our re-entry back into Kerbin. They actually managed to cram 2 people into these capsules. Small capsules be cramming 2 people into, especially since it had a lower payload. This thing is tiny to crew. It's crazy. It's lower than the Vostok, which can only carry 1 person. More efficient. Yeah, right? Totally. So here we go. We're going to get ready for our splashdown as it comes in at a nice epic 4.2-ish meters per second. And any day now. This thing came in actually quite slow. We splash down. And now, only 1 year later in 1965, we have the Voskod, which is another Soviet R7 variant, which is the successor to the Vostok. So this thing could carry 5.9 tons into orbit, which is a lot. This thing is very similar to Voskod and Sputnik, obviously, because it uses the same R7 bottom stage booster ICBM thingy. And then the Voskod has a slightly upgraded upper stage, a little bit more performance, which can power the Voskod spacecraft into orbit. And Voskod is most famous for being the first time that we've done spacewalks in that. And in the first spacewalk, I believe, there's a great Scott Manley video on it, but it's, yeah, it almost, the people died. Well, almost, not really actually, so yeah, success. So, we are now burning the center core, which is going to be depleted. Getting a lot of R7 launches. This is the last R7, don't worry guys. I know there's the third one, I know there's a lot. But yeah, this is the last one. I mean, Soviets, right? And cut off, separation, ignition, epic, very, very epic. There's also going to be a lot of re-entries. I realized while I was filming this video. You guys are gonna have to sit through. Don't worry, I'll try to speed this thing up a little bit quicker so you don't have to get bored watching a bunch of parachutes deploy and re-entry. I mean, the Soviet balls are pretty sick in my shot. They're just so hilarious that someone was in there just hurtling through the atmosphere in a metal ball, just ridiculous to me. So we can separate the spacecraft and we'll crossfade to the deorbit burn like so. and we will bring this guy in for a very epic landing. Yay! Okay, you go and separate all the stuff, and now we're back to that. That just doesn't look good, man. I would not want to be in one of those. I would rather be on a starship than that. Yeah, I'm putting that out there. That's just. I know it's probably pretty safe, but just looking at that, that's just. I don't know. Do you guys agree? It's communism. So yeah, we have popped our drogue and now we're bringing her down in for a landing. And now, once this thing comes in for a landing, we'll be able to move on to the next rocket, which has a massive payload jump. So we're going from 5.9 tons in 1965, and then in the very next year, in 1966, we have the introduction of the Saturn 1B with a payload capacity of 21 tons. Yes, the first rocket to make it over that 20-ton margin or limit or thing. And here it goes, getting ready for a launch. And for the Saturn 1B, they actually used that really tall launch stand because they used the same launch tower for the Saturn 5. And Saturn 1B is quite a bit shorter than the Saturn 5 rather, so they had to build a big giant like tower thing to support it, so all the arms could be at the right height. But either way, very cool rocket, Saturn 1B. They used it for a lot of things, but mainly it was used to test the Apollo spacecraft, as well as the S-4B upper stage for the Saturn 5. Post moon landings in Saturn 5s, it was also used to shuttle crew to the little Skylab. That's the one, Skylab, and there goes separate the bottom stage now and lit up S4B. And it was also used in the Apollo Soyuz docking thing, which is pretty cool, and like Unity, right? Where they docked an Apollo and a Soyuz together, and they like met up, and it was very epic and stuff. So, we're gonna in the orbit. This thing does not have not a lot of power. S4B is quite not underpowered because it's really a vacuum stage. It's really used mainly for translunar injection on the Saturn 5. But point is, it's getting its way. We're just about to cross the Kármán line of 70 kilometers, and then we will just be about ready to circularize, and then you guys will get ready for another re-entry. You guys not sick of re-entries? But yeah, so yeah, this thing exclusively launched Apollos and was used for the testing and stuff like that. And there is our Apollo, and there is our deorbit burn. Oh, the waterfall plume looks just on the AJ-10. I didn't even realize there's a little satellite in here, so that thing is going to die. So now we're going to go ahead and separate the Apollo command module here, and we are going to do our entry with the Apollo. And here we go, coming in for a jolly old landing. And yes, Apollo did splash down, and I may have misjudged my deorbit burn, and we just missed the ocean, but who cares? Don't at me, or do at me. I don't know. I get a lot of DMs, so maybe join the server, those plugs. So bringing her in for a landing, and nice. And now Saturn 5, yes, the big guy. It's the big boy, and oh, just listen to this. Oh, that is just so good. That is just, oh, yeah. It's so good. Yeah, these monsters are just incredible, man. So I really should have started doing these earlier. But Saturn 5, we all know what Saturn 5 is. It was first launched in 1967 with a payload capacity of 140 tons. It's still the biggest rocket to ever fly. This thing is crazy. We went from 20 tons biggest rocket, 21 tons to 140 tons. So, whew, big rocket. So we've stage ready the bottom stage now and get the S2 stage powered up. And then that will get us most of the way to orbit, and then we'll fire up the S4B to get us the rest of the way. We all know Saturn 5 was used for, it was Apollo. This one got us to the moon. It was pretty sick. N1's not on this list because I don't think there's ever a time that the N1 was tested that the Saturn 5 wasn't flying, and the N1 was at lower payload capacity than Saturn 5, and also N1 kind of failed. So the thing is that successfully got to orbit, you know. So we've staged away the second stage, and now we're going to get into orbit. And because this video is already like 23-ish minutes long, so we are going to just we're going to speed run through an Apollo mission. So we got translunar injection, we got the reorientation of the spacecraft, we got the lunar injection, we got the lunar insertion, we got the undocking, we got the landing. Crap, I can't even keep up with this. We got the launch off of the moon, we got the redocking, and then we got the lunar ejection burn, and then we got re-entry, and then we got landing. Awesome, very epic. Saturn V Apollo, very cool, and Proton is up next. Whew. Yeah, trying to go fast here. Yeah, sorry if you, hope you enjoyed the video, but Proton took over from the Saturn V once the Saturn V was retired after the launch of Skylab. So in 1973, we got the Proton, which is down to a payload capacity of 22.8 tons. So yeah, quite a bit lower than 140 tons. I think it's crazy that in 1964, 1964 Titan, 1965 Voskod, 1966 Saturn 1B, 1967 Saturn 5. So in all those years, it kept switching around and stuff. But in 1972, 73 rather, we got the Proton, and which is most famous, I believe, for looking really weird at the bottom stage. It looks like it has boosters, but those aren't actually boosters. Yeah, and also it launched some pretty cool payloads, such as Salyut, which we're launching right now. This is Salyut 6 I decided to go with, which are some of the Soviet space stations. Very cool. So we got a 3-stage design right here, which is just about to get ourselves into a low Earth orbit. And then we will be getting very ready to move on to the next one. See, look, no re-entry for this one. We get to deploy our payload and be done. So there it is, and there is our very awesome Salyut number 6, which a very cool space station. So that is a Proton, and now we can move on to a very famous rocket, the Space Shuttle. Yes. We have a very epic space shuttle that is going to be getting ready to head up into the sky. The space shuttle took over from Proton in 1981. And there it goes. We have the SRBs, we have the RS-25s, we have a little bit of explosions, we have a roll program, and we are heading up to orbit. So, depending on how you count the space shuttle, vast majority of people say that the payload capacity shuttle is 27.5 tons. However, if you include the orbiter as part of the payload, it could get really high, the payload capacity, like over 50, actually even close to 90. So it depends on how you count it. If you count the orbiter, but it really doesn't count because it has fueled engines, and there's ways you can mess around the numbers. You give it really high payload capacity, and there's also ways to mess around the number. You get a lower payload capacity, but the most generally accepted term is to not count the orbiter itself as part of the payload, which means that a payload capacity of 27.5 tons, which is a respectable payload. So a space shuttle, we all know what space shuttle was. It was honestly kind of controversial rocket. Now, it wasn't money, very expensive, but we're gonna actually break up the space shuttle. Well, we're gonna leave it in orbit to launch Energia. Very epic rocket and very cool mod. This thing looks sick. And what is that payload? That doesn't look like a Buran. The Energia was most famously for launching. That's the Polyus. The Polyus, which is Energia's test/first launch. The Polyus is one of the most famous spacecraft failures, actually, but the Energia performed perfectly. But the Polyus, when it's separate from the Energia, it had a computer error, and it spun itself around and just flipped out of control and crashed. So, very awesome. Energia is a cool rocket, so Energia actually could carry 100 tons to orbit, and it actually overtook the space shuttle in 1987 with its launch. So, yeah, the Energia is a pretty sick rocket. Energia is basically what if the space shuttle, but no orbiter, just that. Cool rocket, 100 tons, which is a giant. Only 2 rockets have ever been able to carry more than 100 tons to orbit. Saturn V, Energia. I mean, I guess it's literally on the mark of 100, but yeah, very cool. But maybe SLS and Starship will be able to pass it soon. So, actually, SLS Block 1 is only 95 tons, so And now, Space Shuttle, because the Energia was retired in 1988 because the Soviet Union was kind of collapsing at that time. So, I guess, sad communism. So, Space Shuttle took over from 1988 all the way on for a while there. So, just for the Space Shuttle second stint as biggest rocket ever, I just figured I'd just do the re-entry and landing from the first one. And we're going to be actually not landing at the KSP, we're going to be landing at a place called Jeb's Junkyard, which is one of the airfields that comes with Kerbin side, which is a really cool mod. So yeah, we're gonna come say hi to Jeb in his little junkyard here with the comically small landing legs that came with this mod. So I don't know. Here we go. Hey junkyard, very cool. And let's see here. Do I butter it? Do I butter? Yeah, it could have been better. But here we go. Gonna be popping the drogue chute. I kind of landed it a little bit longer, so we kind of gotta step on the brakes here to get the thing stopped by the end of the runway. But that will bring the shuttle to a landing. And what was more than the shuttle? What was more? What was more than shuttle? More than the shuttle. After the shuttle was the Delta IV Heavy. Yes, in 2004, the introduction of the Delta IV Heavy did actually dethrone the shuttle to become the world's biggest, most capable, most epic rocket. Okay, we kind of got a story to tell here. You guys ready for a story? So, technically, the Delta IV Medium, the Delta IV Medium did launch before the Delta IV Heavy, and did technically have a very, very slightly higher payload capacity than the space shuttle. It is not on this list. Two reasons. A, I couldn't find a good mod for it. B, I decided to be nice to the shuttle, and because it is lugging that entire orbiter, I said, yeah, the orbiter's not technically counted as part of the payload, but it's the Delta IV Heavy. The Delta IV Medium has like barely a ton of payload capacity added, so I just figured I'd be nice to the shuttle and say, hey, you have to carry that orbit curve so you can get that. Also, technically, as we can open up the fairing of our Delta IV Heavy, and the Delta IV upper stage is fucking slow. Like, holy crap, it is really slow. It does not like to go. Technically, the Delta IV Medium, rather, if it had all of its SRBs, it technically could just squeeze over the payload capacity to LEO of the Delta IV Heavy, which is just absurd. But Delta IV Heavy just completely blew it out for Geo, so I figured I'd just give it to the Delta IV Heavy. But now we have the Saturn, the Falcon! Yo, it's Falcon, guys! It's #1! This is the one! So, Delta IV Heavy was dethroned, actually, in 2018 with the launch of Falcon Heavy. So, Falcon Heavy is currently the largest operational rocket in the world, which I think is pretty cool. So, there are a lot of different ways you can measure Falcon Heavy's payload capacity. If you do fully expended, as we actually get ready to separate the booster, and we can get booster cam, boosty McBoost cam, which is pretty sick. It is 63.8 tons, which is pretty wild. And oh, by the way, I couldn't get a Starman mod working, so unfortunately, guys, I think we're gonna have to do a little bit different of a payload. We get Jeff. Everyone say hi to Jeff. This is Jeff. It was. I don't know why this is a thing, but it was made by Black Shadow, who's like a Starship guy. He makes a bunch of really cool starships. But he one day said, "Hey, try out my Jeff." So I'm like, "Okay, here's Jeff. Cool." So that's Jeff. Everyone say hi to Jeff, who's our replacement Starman for today. Falcon Heavy, 63.8 tons expended, which is just completely blows Delta out of the water. But reused, technically, it is anywhere from 18 to 28 tons, depending on who you ask. Depending on the level of reusability. So, yeah, that's the story. Members. Everyone, if you want to become a member, you can hit the join button. Thank you all the members. And we also got on list the screen Patreons. If you are a Patreon, thank you very much. And that's the end of the video. I'd like to thank you for watching. Until next time, please rate, comment to this video once again. Thank you for watching. Until next time, and bye.